how much progress we're making. But to start us off, Kenya has a candidate in the contest for Secretary General, that is International Maritime Organization. Why are we interested in this? What is the implication for Kenya, for example, if Ambassador Nancy Karigido is elected to that position?
We are really campaigning hard to ensure that she gets this position, because the profile for our country will change internationally as it is, and we'll be able to get benefits directly owing to the factors as Secretary General she influences policy. And this is the first time that an African candidate is standing for these elections, and a woman with that. So you can imagine the implications, not only to the global south, but also to women, empowering women. And I think that has been the strategy that this country has had, for the last 10 years or so.
What are the prospects so far?
She's a very popular candidate. She's amongst the top 3. So we hope and pray. We're crossing our fingers to ensure that we succeed. There are 2 other contenders who are strong also, but we are sure, owing to the uniqueness of our candidate, she will be able to win these elections.
Obviously, her candidature comes in the wake of a realization that the number of women in this sector, particularly the maritime sector, is quite insignificant, particularly when you come back home. I don't know what your department is doing to ensure that women participate as a critical cog in the growth of the economy through maritime sector.
Of course, as a country, we have an affirmative action. We want to ensure that women are given equal opportunities, with men, to be equal partners in exploiting the resources that we have in this country. We are pushing a number of our young ladies also to undertake maritime studies. We have some of them who have done maritime engineering. By the way, I even interacted with some of them, I think about 3 or 4 days ago, when we had the African Association of African Maritime Authorities in Mombasa. It's just that getting these opportunities is also a bit of a challenge. On nautical science, they have had a breakthrough. We already have Captain Elizabeth, who has done extremely well, Elizabeth Marami. And as it is, she's leading in that particular career. Even, she has surpassed what men have been able to do so far. So we are pushing this agenda because we know the population of men to women is nearly equal. We have to give them these opportunities that are available for them to exploit them also, because we are there as partners to expand our economy.
In the creation of this department 6 years ago, 6 years down the line, what would you say are the inroads that the Republic of Kenya has made in terms of exploiting blue economy and its maritime resources?
There is a lot that has been done. If you can recall, we had an international conference on the blue economy where we brought on board all the stakeholders. That's about 3 or 4 years ago, and laid the strategy now on the blue exploitation of the blue economy. But not only that, I think one of the biggest challenges that we are facing as an African country is unemployment. The number of youth who are out there tarmacking looking for jobs is extremely high. And as a country, we need to do something on the same. You may have realized that ever since this department was established, the number of seafarers that we have deployed out there who are working in international shipping companies has increased tremendously. As it is now, we have about 6,800. We have realized that, as we keep on engaging these international shipping companies, they appraise us that our youth are extremely hardworking, they are disciplined, they speak good English. So in comparison to seafarers, from other countries, we have an edge. And therefore, we need to be very aggressive to ensure as many as possible are employed.
When you talk about maritime affairs, and probably for the viewer out there watching, there are those who believe when we talk about blue economy maritime affairs, we are only making reference to the Indian Ocean down the coast. What are our maritime resources? So that we talk about the investment opportunities available. When we talk about our maritime resources, are we just referring to the Indian Ocean?
No, not at all. our maritime resources are immense. Because we're also talking of the inland waters. You're actually talking of all the water bodies. So, for example, in Kenya, we're talking of Lake Victoria, we're talking of Lake Turkana, we're talking of Lake Naivasha, you know, we're talking of our rivers.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So it is the blue space that is available in our country, you know, that we can exploit resources within it for our own good. Yeah, so it's not the Indian Ocean alone. I remember even when I was initially appointed as PS, you know, a number of Kenyans were asking me whether my office should be in Mombasa. No, because I'm there to ensure that all the water bodies that we have in this country as a major resource can be exploited. Yeah.
Let's talk about it, because you referenced jobless youth out there who are watching you, not just the jobless youth. There are several others who want to invest their monies into the blue economy. What are the opportunities that exist that one can look at for investment?
So as it is, you know, we've just scratched the surface of the resources that we have. Other than fishing, for example, because, you know, every time you think of a water body, the only thing that comes to mind is possibly fishing. There is exploitation of, you know, green energy. Talking of solar energy, you know, that can be generated by having solar panels, you know, in all our water bodies. Because it's easy to have solar panels planted, say, in the Indian Ocean, you know, or in some of our lakes. Not only that, wind energy that can be generated. Not only that, we have pharmaceutical products also that can be exploited. Not only that, we also have minerals that can be exploited. So you are talking of a whole lot of resources that are yet to be exploited by our entrepreneurs. And also, what we are pushing for as a State Department is cabotage, you know, where these big shipping companies can offload the big containers, say in our port of Mombasa or port of Lamu, and then our local entrepreneurs, you know, who own vessels, can be able to transport these goods to our neighboring countries and also, you know, within the country. So there is a lot really that our young entrepreneurs can do. They can invest in shipping, you know. We're already in discussions with financial institutions. I had a discussion with the GCEO of Equity Bank on the possibility of giving loans to our young people to procure vessels, to charter vessels, so that they can be able to transport them and do business in our water bodies. Yeah.
As you talk about investment, obviously government incentives go a long way into attracting investment, particularly into some of its sectors. What are the incentives you're offering, particularly to the private sector, to invest in Kenya's blue economy?
Okay, so number one, we have the Liwatoni Special Economic Zone. We are offering zero tariffs. You know, to encourage our entrepreneurs to be able to add value to the products, you know, that we've been able to exploit, say fish, you know, ensure that fish is not only packaged, but also exported abroad. Those are some of the incentives that we're offering. But not only that, one of the major incentives that we see can be able to, you know, bring benefits to our young entrepreneurs is on the issue of owning boats. And I think the government has been on the forefront, you know, in pushing for this. There are quite a number of boats that were given for free the other day to a few cooperatives, but we are pushing them to own them. And it's not very expensive to own a boat, you know. With the small boats that they have, they'll be able to build their businesses until eventually they're able to procure a bigger vessel. So that's what we are doing as it is currently.
Tell me, particularly when you focus, let's say, for example, like the Indian Ocean, and there was some dredging happening there like about 2-3 years ago. What is the ministry doing, particularly to prevent what you would call the spoiling or undoing the gains we are making in the blue economy? Okay,
so I think you're making reference to piracy, you know, and terrorism because of the Al-Qaeda presence in Somalia and also in the Indian Ocean. But, you know, the government has done a lot on that. We have secured, you know, the international waters along the Indian Ocean, you know, where our countries border the Indian Ocean together with Somalia and these other countries within the East African region. By deploying our forces in Somalia, That guaranteed security because they were able to neutralize, you know, the Al-Qaeda attacks that we've been having over time. But not only that, our Navy also was deployed into the Indian Ocean, and so the waters are safe as it is now. And this was declared by the International Monetary Organization. The challenges that we had before, where it was seen that, you know, these were dangerous waters to ply on, as it is currently, these are safe waters. And therefore, international shipping companies right from the Mediterranean can make their way down, you know, to South Africa and beyond without any problem. So that is guaranteed. Yeah.
When you mention, you know, about some of the threats that we face, and obviously the safety that now exists in our waters, it reminds me of a maritime border dispute between us and Somalia. But my question is, how do you handle such disputes between these nations? Your department working with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for example, how is it handling that dispute between us and our neighbors?
Okay, it's an issue that is being handled by Foreign Affairs, but you see, initially we have to engage in a bilateral, you know, way with Somalia. And if it turns out to be a bit difficult, then obviously the International Court of Justice. So as it is, a judgment was entered. Kenya has already come out strongly to say whatever judgment was entered was not in our favor, and therefore we have to stand on what we pronounced earlier on. So it's a matter that is being dealt with by Ministry of Foreign Affairs very effectively, and I think we'll leave it to them to handle it, you know, comprehensively.
Absolutely. When you turn to shipping, do we have a shipping registry in Kenya?
We do have one. It's a closed shipping registry. Ideally, we should be able to open it because we will benefit immensely by opening it. But currently, it is closed. We are only registering shipping vessels that are owned by local entrepreneurs in the country. Gradually, with time, that is in plan. We will be able to have a hybrid one, both a closed one and an open one, because there are benefits that can accrue out of having a robust register.
You mentioned benefiting immensely if we open it. Mention some of its benefits that we, you know, guaranteed to reap from opening it.
One of them is annual subscriptions, yeah, because these shipping companies will be paying us an annual amount that we'll have agreed on, and therefore that is revenue for our country. But not only that, we'll be able to influence them also to give us job opportunities. Not only job opportunities, by the way, one of the biggest frustrations that our young graduates have is on sea time experience. You know, so we can easily enter into memorandum of understandings with them, you know, to guarantee sea time experience so that they can be marketable in the international labor market. You know, they can be employed by even bigger international shipping companies and earn their living out of working with them. Yeah, so some of the benefits are basically in terms of the employment opportunities that we will realize.
The Association of African Maritime Administration headquarters are coming to Kenya. Again, the benefit that Kenya stands to gain from it, and then how does Kenya now position itself as a shipping hub through this move?
That is a big plus for our country, by the way, because we really pushed for it during the last AMA conference that we had in Mombasa. The benefits are obvious. Again, in terms of annual subscriptions that will come in terms of Forex, so our financial institutions will benefit for those that would have opened our accounts with. But not only that, you know, well, our mind is geared towards employment opportunities. If we have the headquarters in Kenya, you know, drivers will be employed here, the clerical staff, the procurement staff, you know, the administration staff, the accountants. Kenyans will benefit immensely from the administrative jobs. Of course, the senior jobs will be shared equally amongst the AMA countries, but the administrative jobs will be ours for the taking. And therefore, it is critical that we have this AMA headquarters, you know, established the soonest possible. Initially, we will house the AMA Secretariat at the Kenya Maritime Authority headquarters that has just been constructed. But gradually, with time, our objective is that we procure land and we put up a headquarters for AMA.
Other than the, you know, the jobs availed by the positioning of AMA in the Republic of Kenya, how does Kenya use this opportunity to position itself now as a shipping hub?
Now, we want to be a leading country in Africa when it comes to shipping matters. We'll be able to influence policy. You know, there's a lot that we can benefit, by the way, by trading within ourselves in the continent, because we are talking of 1.2 billion people. That's a huge market. As it is currently, the statistics indicate that trade within Africa is at 2%. Compare it to Europe, where it is at around 60%. There is a lot that we can do in terms of intra-trade in Africa. And as you realize, you know, most goods are actually transported on the sea. Actually, 90% of transportation of goods is on the sea, not on the land. So we will benefit immensely as countries, because we'll be able to establish national shipping lines. We will also encourage the private sector to procure vessels and be able to transport goods between countries in Africa and do intertrade in Africa.
The shipping value chain, the players, some of them complain there's heavy taxation involved. What's your take as Principal Secretary?
Yeah, I know you are making reference possibly to bunkering. That is the major complaint that we've been having. But we are in discussion with Ministry of Finance, because some of the owners of our shipping vessels have had to go to Seychelles, you know, to procure fuel there, because it's nearly zero rated there and it's extremely high in Kenya. But we're in discussion also with Ministry of Treasury, Ministry of Finance concerning the same. The biggest challenge is this. You know, you zero rate fuel for vessel owners, and the same fuel finds its way into the local market. That causes a problem. That causes a big problem. And therefore, we have to put in place strategies to ensure that doesn't happen. So yes, we have received those complaints, and we are going to address them comprehensively.
In terms of wording of competition, because our port, for example, logistically will serve even as far as DRC, Rwanda, and such countries. How are we wording off competition and making sure that our transport through our waters remains competitive as compared to the others in the region?
We have an advantage as a country, you know, because Kenya is the entry to the East African region. And I think you're making reference to the landlocked countries like Uganda, DRC, you know, Rwanda, and the like. We are, of course, in competition with, you know, our brothers in Tanzania, because I think they have also tried to woo the landlocked countries so that they make use of the port of Dar es Salaam. But as you well know, we also have Terminal 2. You know, put a modern terminal, you know, that we are trying as much as we can to woo these international shipping companies, you know, to transport their goods through Terminal 2. Kenya Ports Authority also has become extremely efficient. As you know, the government changed management recently. We have someone who we hope is going to revamp KPA, you know, so that we can be able to, the turnover, the time that shipping lines take to offload and also to load, you know, goods be as little as possible, you know, so that we can reduce it. And that will be able to compete with Dar es Salaam. We'll also be able to compete with Djibouti, because Djibouti is coming up, you know, very, very well. So these are our competitors, and we are doing the best that we can to ensure that there is efficiency in port management.
When you talk about port management, exactly what are you targeting? Because part of the biggest cry that has been amongst, you know, the people who transport goods through our waters is the time it takes to clear your goods. The Kenya Airports Authority, of course, speaks to efficiency. What exactly are you targeting when you mention reform in Kenya Ports Authority, obviously in conjunction with the Ministry of Transport, your colleagues?
It's being done manually as it is now, but we are digitalizing, you know, the entire system. Once the system is digitized, then it will be, you know, taking the shortest period of time, yeah, and therefore that will ensure efficiency. Yeah, of course, there is the other side of it, the disadvantage of possibly offloading, you know, some people, but we'll be able to take care of it. We will balance it by creating more jobs in terms of, you know, the seafarer opportunities that are available. So even, you know, the people who are working at the port do not need to fear, you know, once we digitize, you know, the system completely, we are just ensuring efficiency, which is critical for us to be able to compete with the other harbors, you know, within the East African region and on the Horn of Africa.
If the continent is able to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area, what impact will it have on our sector, the maritime sector?
Okay, so again, as I said, you know, we will have common tariffs, and therefore we'll be able to do trade between countries. As I mentioned earlier on, you know, this is an area that we have not exploited as African countries. We have a huge market that we can exploit, you know. We have not been able to exploit it because of different regulatory frameworks that we have in place. This is where the African Association of Maritime Authorities come in. We've been pushing them to be enablers in the industry, you know, because Africa is known to have very long red tape, you know, that becomes a bottleneck many a times when it comes to business. So we want to reduce those bottlenecks. You know, once we have common tariffs across the board, business will be extremely easy between African countries.
Common tariffs across the board. You've mentioned about Path 2, which is quite important down there. What is the progress of expanding our ports?
Now, as you well know, we have Lamu Port. We are trying to, you know, encourage as many shipping companies as possible to be able to make use of it. This is a natural port that we have, you know, and some of the big players, particularly who dock on the port of Kilindini, have already shown interest, you know, to be able to offload their containers in Lamu, like MSC has shown interest, CMA, CGM has also shown interest, and we are trying to woo as many other, you know, players in the market as possible to make use of it. But not only that, the inland waters, which many a times we take for granted, as we discussed earlier on, the port of Kisumu, we have to market it as aggressively as possible. And gradually with time also establish other ports within that water body.
There are countries, for example, like Belgium. The port of Antwerp is actually a river port. Is there probably a formulation within the plan of the Department of Shipping and Maritime to probably come up with a model like that, and who would it serve if it was in the pipeline?
We haven't thought of it as of yet, but yes, these are some of the strategies that we can put in place in the long run. Of course, that is an example of a fresh, you know, water body, you know, that has a port. And the same can also apply to some of our major rivers in Africa, you know, like Zambezi and what have you. But in terms of the strategies that we have in Kenya, not yet. We are not yet there.
Not just yet. Climate change, because it is at the center of it. How has climate change affected our maritime sector?
It has affected our maritime sector adversely. Very, very adversely. Particularly when you're talking of, you know, the transport infrastructure. Kenya relies heavily on agricultural production, you know, and owing to drought, it has not been possible for us to produce as much as we used to before. And, you know, this is where we were gaining a lot of business. So in terms of our exports have gone down. But not only that, I think you may have realized during the AMA conference that we had, the last day was on decarbonization, you know. The trend as it is now is to reduce the use of greenhouse gases, you know, and to possibly use ammonia or use hydrogen, you know, to propel engines. And this is where some of our universities can come in, What I keep on telling research institutes is we are lucky as an African, country or as a developing economy because we do not need to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, we already know the latest technology that is available. It's just a question of picking it and running with it. So yes, climate change has affected us adversely in terms of business because we rely heavily on agricultural production, but also going forward, if the world will tend to use vessels that are propelled, whose engines are propelled by the modern energy sources, then we'll be left out because we have old engines that are still making use of fuel. Fossil fuel. And therefore, we need to move with speed, owing to the changes that are taking place the world over, and be able to match, what obtains internationally.
Do you think you can be able to mitigate in good time to save our resources?
It's a major challenge, but I think we're equal to the task. Working with research institutes, we should be able to get there. Yeah.
My director is telling me to wind up. The name of this segment is Extra Mile. So to the softer end of this interview, PS Shadrack Mwadime, from a public administrator to a PS. Is it? Do you feel like you're doing just the same job, just on a higher level, or was that a switch?
It's still a question of policy coordination. Administrators coordinate government programs, at the field level. They coordinate government programs at divisional, at county level, at regional level. And it's the same thing that I'm doing as it is now, coordinating things, at the national level in the shipping and maritime industry. But now at policy level, influencing policy, positively to bring about the change that is desired. Yeah, so I'm in a comfortable place.
Comfortable place. Having served in the public sector for that long, what motivates you? What would you say is what pushes Shadrack Mwadime?
I want to see change, particularly for young people. I think we haven't given them, the best environment really to develop their talents and to prosper. We have not guaranteed them employment opportunities, unlike the way it was during our time. Many of them graduate and they're out there tarmacking. My desire is to create as many employment opportunities for our young people as possible. But at the end of my term, I also want to see the blue economy influencing our economy, our national economy positively. I want to see expansion of our economy. I want to see the standard of living of Kenyans improving. That will give me satisfaction at the end of my term.
Absolutely, and we will hold you up to that standard.
Yes, you can hold me accountable.
Absolutely. The Principal Secretary in charge of Shipping and Maritime speaking to us this evening. Obviously, there's so much to reap from the dividend provided by our maritime sector, and that's why we put a cap on Prime Edition. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. God bless you. Have yourself a fantastic night and the end of the week. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Asante.